To understand how fashion and totalitarianism intersected under the Third Reich, we must first see that clothing was never just about covering the body. It is a language of status, of group identity, and of power. When the Nazis rose to power in 1933, they inherited a European fashion world dominated by Paris, French couture, luxury silks, exotic materials. But Nazi ideologies saw a threat in that: foreign influence, Jewish designers, cosmopolitanism. They sought to redirect fashion to serve Volk, the people, and to purge it of what they called degenerate influence. Hence the founding of the German Fashion Institute, the Deutsches Modeinstitut, in 1933, directly under Nazi auspices. Its mandate to assert a pure German aesthetic. Alongside it, the ADIFA, the Arbeitsgemeinschaft Deutsch-Arische Fabrikanten der Bekleidungsindustrie, was formed to drive out Jewish-owned fashion houses, enforcing an Aryanization of the garment industry. Jewish designers, tailors, and textile merchants were dispossessed or forced into exile. Whole fashion districts, such as Berlin's Hausvogtei-Platz, were decimated. Thus began a regime's violent reprogramming of what style could mean in the Third Reich. In the hands of the Nazis, uniform was the ultimate haute couture, the blending of authority, spectacle, and ideology. The Nazis invested in the symbolic language of uniforms, tailoring, insignia, cuts to project discipline, unity, and power. Rather than spontaneous fashion, uniforms were deliberately designed, mass-produced, and visually standardized. One of the most infamous cases is Hugo Boss. In the 1930s, Hugo Boss joined the Nazi Party and acquired contracts to manufacture uniforms for the SA, SS, Hitler Youth, and other organizations. Though Boss did not design the black SS uniform, that design is attributed to SS members Karl Diebitsch and Walter Heck. His factories produced many of the garments. During the war, Hugo Boss's factories used forced laborers, including concentration camp detainees and POWs. After the war, Boss was penalized as a supporter and beneficiary of Nazi socialism. But Hugo Boss was not alone. The Nazis centralized fashion direction, controlling textile supplies, regulating style, and marginalizing foreign luxury influence. They sought to turn the visual culture of attire into a discipline of aesthetics in service of state power. While German labels produced uniforms, French and European luxury houses faced a stark dilemma under occupation: close down, resist, or collaborate. Coco Chanel is one of the most controversial figures in this narrative. During the Nazi occupation of Paris, Chanel moved into the Ritz, where German officers lodged, and allegedly had a romantic relationship with a Nazi intelligence officer, Hans Gunther von Dinklage. Some declassified documents suggest she may have operated as a spy, passing information between Nazi and British circles. After the war, Chanel was investigated for collaboration, but reportedly avoided prosecution, possibly with the intervention of Winston Churchill. Chanel's story is painful and ambiguous, a mixture of survival, personal ambition, moral compromise. Other couture houses also faced pressure. Some shuttered entirely, but others continued operations under the control or patronage of Nazi clients. Dresses for Nazi wives, accessory orders for occupying officers, and forced justification of survival. Christian Dior, before launching his own label, worked under Lucien Lelong during the occupation, making garments for wealthy clients, including wives of Nazi officials. Meanwhile, Cristobal Balenciaga managed to keep his atelier open, aided in part by his connection to Francisco Franco's Spain, making his house one of only a few allowed to operate. He later claimed that he refused Hitler's request to relocate his fashion house to Berlin.
The Nazi state was not merely a violent regime. It was a massive enterprise of bureaucracy, propaganda, and commerce. Luxury was assimilated into that enterprise. In Germany, the regime pushed German fashion as a cultural project. The Deutsches Modeinstitut tried to define and promote a German style. excluding French influence and asserting domestic cloth, folk elements, simpler cuts. ADEFA required member firms to advertise Aryan-made goods, effectively policing who was allowed to produce what. This was part of a broader Aryanization of industry. Jewish textile and fashion firms were confiscated, forcibly sold, or closed. Many Jewish designers and business owners fled, were exiled, or perished. Thus, what had been a cosmopolitan, international fashion economy was forcibly reworked into a culturally narrow, state-controlled, ethnically pure system. Meanwhile, luxury in occupied territories was a source of profit. High-ranking Nazi officers and collaborators often spent on opulent garments, accessories, art, and jewelry. Luxury houses in occupied Paris, Milan, or Vienna accepted these orders, either to survive or to enrich themselves. The lines between coercion, collaboration, and profiteering blurred. The Reich also used fashion as propaganda, to show the world Germany's supposed cultural vitality even amid war. The regime subsidized exhibitions, textile shows, fashion fairs intended to impress both domestically and abroad.
The aesthetic legacies of this period continue to haunt modern culture. The concept of Nazi chic, the adoption or stylization of Nazi imagery in fashion or pop culture, is shocking precisely because it wields that visual legacy. While often meant for shock, this reuse of uniforms, symbols, colors, black, red, silver, militaristic cuts conveys the seduction of authoritarian aesthetics. The visual vocabulary crafted by the Nazis, militarized formality, symmetry, sharp cuts, still resonates. The specter of uniforms as style, authority as design, lingers. Yet behind that aesthetic veneer lies a dark business, forced labor, stolen property, exclusion, and murder. The dresses, fabrics, suits, designs, all part of a system that enriched some and destroyed many. After 1945, many fashion houses sought to erase or minimize their wartime roles. Hugo Boss eventually issued apologies, acknowledging forced labor and complicity. But historical scholarship continues to excavate these buried stories. The erased designers, the expropriated atelier owners, the moral inheritance of style under extreme power. When we reflect on high fashion for the Führer, we do not merely critique garments. We critique how design and visual culture can be enlisted in systems of violence. We remind ourselves that style is never apolitical. We live in an age when branding, aesthetics, and visual identity are powerful. But the story of Nazi luxury reminds us that even beauty can be weaponized, and even couture can be complicit. As we examine fashion's history, we must ask, who profits? Who is excluded? Whose stories were erased? And how does we guard against the seduction of authoritarian aesthetics? Thank you for watching High Fashion for the Führer, the dark business of Nazi luxury. If you found this illuminating, please like, share, and subscribe. In our next video, we will dive deeper into individual designers and lost fashion houses decimated by the Holocaust.